Hey everyone, welcome to week 20, day 5. So, this is our last day of our ongoing one value week. Yesterday, we did a super tough painting because we were trying to understand color as something that could be interchangeable. So, our color could speak about light and it could also speak about shadow, our same color. And that was super tough. But today, I'm returning to like a sense of unity, of a big mass of light and a big mass of shadow. And I'm gonna punch up saturation and we'll see how that goes. Remember, next week, it's gonna be a whole new theme. Thank you for hanging out this week. Okay, let's get started. As a smaller recap, because I think that today's final painting deserves doing a small reflection on the last 4 paintings that we've done. Let me start by saying that yesterday's painting, I realized I was trying to do something that was a little bit kind of off the beaten path for me because I thought I was doing the same exercise on both Tuesday and Wednesday. So on Monday, I kind of broke up the form a little bit. I was using a Zorn palette in a very strange way, but it still gave me the chance to access a ton of beautiful hues. I mean, in my mind, I had yellows and oranges and reds and greens and blues and purples. So I thought there was a ton of color in there, and I broke the form up. I mean, Tommy's photo was brilliant because it actually gave me the chance to just see a great mass of light. But then in the shadow mass particularly, I could just play around and just create conventions for some of those shadow masses while the form was turning. So I had a really fun time trying to almost like reconfigure form through breaking it in all those kind of little hues. As a side note, something really weird happened when I was painting that painting. I don't know why it happened, and maybe some of you guys can shine some light on this. It probably has to do with the way paint is absorbed and then oxidized, like the amount of paint that was absorbed and then whatever remained on the surface layer and how it oxidized. And let me explain a little bit. I noticed that because I was working on a layer, and this is super important, and it was a layer of oil paint. I actually had to prep this like probably 2 weeks in advance. And because I have a white that has dryers in it, that Michael Harding white that has dryers in it, I know that that's going to help me reach a somewhat stable, I would say, layer of paint. So I left it maybe 10 days to dry, maybe a little bit more. And I think that that's pretty fine. I mean, honestly, in my experience, that would be pretty fine. And especially working with this white, it would be pretty fine. The darker layers, the ones that had more ivory black than titanium white, I actually had to leave a couple more days. But I realized that the absorbency of paint is very different when it's being absorbed through a layer of paint rather than through your substrate. So I thought, okay, let me see how my colors behave when I'm painting on this gray layer, this flat gray layer. And my hope was that I would also have good absorbency because that white, because of the dryers, it does create kind of like a slicker, rubbery surface, if I could describe it in some way. And it probably would have been best to just kind of sand it down maybe a little bit so it would have a little bit of tooth and I could get some of the canvas, some of the linen back. But I painted it on top because I wanted to have that flat, single, opaque layer of gray. And I don't know what happened, but the colors got darker. Some of the grays, particularly some of the grays, they got darker. And this wasn't a matter of them just oxidizing and then you have to retouch varnish or oil out and then you can see your color relationships back again. No, this was very weird. And I actually retouched the painting because I thought, wow, why is it shifting? Like, why is this color shifting? This is so strange. And I was like, no, let me take it back to the original value because it was very spotty, very spotty. And again, this wasn't about just having some dead layers and some like differences in absorbency. Like I know how to recognize those. So it wasn't about that. It was something kind of weirder. It almost behaved like Danny was telling me, it almost behaved like gouache. That the color you put down actually shifts in value. And it was driving me insane. It actually is still driving me insane because I don't really know exactly what's happening. I don't know if the the white with the dryers actually has something to do there, that maybe the dryers are impacting the value specifically, because this is not happening with all my other hues, but it's actually impacting the way the color dries and is shifting its hue. It's almost like it's absorbing something and then leaving in the surface something that may oxidize as darker in the ivory black. I have no idea. This is just purely anecdotal, but it happened enough times because I ended up retouching the painting quite a bit that it drove me insane. I was like, what the hell is going on? And why is it happening solely with the black and white, with the ivory black and titanium white? I don't know. I'm going to probably ask Michael if he knows anything about that. And I'll read a little bit just to see if maybe that shift is something that happens with ivory black. But in my experience, I've never seen that. But I'll promise I'll look some of this up and let you guys know if I find anything. Anyways, on Monday, I broke my color up a little bit. And then because I had broken it up, I told you guys that on Tuesday and Wednesday, I wanted like a sense of unity. So I thought in very binary terms, and I was like, this is my massive light, this is my massive shadow. And because I was thinking massive light, massive shadow, it is no surprise that then I chose portraits to be my subject matter for this week. So that way I would understand how to deal with color, and I would just say, okay, my subject matter can be a constant, but I can play around with my color relationships. But I know I'm always going to have big, massive light, big, massive shadow. It's going to be super clear, super easy for me to identify, and that's it. And on Thursday, yesterday, that's when I thought, okay, but I'm doing the same exercise every single day. I'm not going to learn much if I just kind of desperately cling on to the things I already know. So yesterday, it was a very strange painting for me because if I wanted to control it a little bit better, I could have made color relationships that would not be so kind of strident between them, but I wanted to see things. I didn't want to put color down that would be easy on my eyes, because if I control it, if I gray it down, if I make an effort to make it more harmonious or more analogous in the color wheel, then all I would see would be sort of natural relationships between those colors. But I thought, no, let me pick a bright orange, a bright blue, bright red, bright yellow, and let me see if I can move these together and not just overmix them and gray them out. Let me see them for what they are, and let me see if I can, by just generating all these abstract relationships. And I guess that was the key yesterday, that it was very, very abstract. The image that was configured, it's not. It's just Samu reading with his headphones on, and that's about it. But the notions that were behind the efforts in trying to depict form were super, super abstract. And my understanding of the color was just in the purest, most abstract terms. Now, I loved that part, I have to say. That was super, super enjoyable. But the part where I sacrificed the reconfiguring of form was the one that kind of hit me in the gut. Because when I see the image, I still see something that is very, very kind of difficult for my eyes to put together. Like, I love seeing all the possibilities that I have, and I love having opened this door that I very, very rarely traveled through. I love that because I had this experience yesterday, I'm able to say, okay, I kind of went through that. It's not like I've mastered anything. No. This is not even close to knowing what I'm doing. But I already had this experience. And that actually is worth a lot if you really think about it, because you've been there. You've felt how that actually feels. It's not like somebody's telling you, yeah, if you put this color against this color, this will happen. No. You were there for hours just struggling to try to make something work. And you can carry that experience with you forever. So I know that this moment, even if it's a small session, it will always be with me, and it had an impact on me. And maybe in the future, it can have an impact on my painting that right now I have yet to understand. So I love these moments, but yesterday it was very tough on me because I noticed how my brain is trying to correct course. It's trying to tell me, dude, you have to do something that makes sense. Like, you have to make more sense of the way you are trying to interpret form. And I guess that's been my whole struggle, just trying to marry the painter that I am with all these new experiences that are kind of creeping in. Again, like I said, we could do years of these experiments with color and they would be amazing. So this is just done so that our mind just kind of opens up a little bit. But obviously, it would never be enough just doing a single painting of one of these exercises. So for today, I said, okay, this is going to be my darkest painting. In my mind, when I started the week, I was like, I'm going to leave that one for the end because I really think I need 4 paintings to try and understand what I'm doing because I really feel like I have no clue what I'm doing. I think I need 4 paintings under my belt to say, okay, I'm kind of easing into this. I have these past 4 experiences that can teach me a little bit of what I have to do today. So today I felt like empowered. Today I felt like, okay, this is my darkest value. This is where I can actually call upon a ton of saturation because in my palette makeup, I don't have lighter colors that are super saturated. Mind you, yes, I do have a bismuth yellow that it's very nice and rich. It's not crazy saturated, but it is saturated. It's very beautiful. But I usually understand saturation in my palette with Cad Red, obviously, and with alizarin crimson. Maybe, if you really think about it, my palette, and when I speak about my palette, it's not about the colors that I can kind of add in. No, the palette that I've worked with for 90% of my paintings is titanium white, yellow ochre, cad red, alizarin crimson, raw umber, and ultramarine blue. It's such a dead palette. It's so gray. I mean, I have a cool opaque color, then an earth yellow, then a super saturated red orange, yes, then a saturated but transparent red violet, then a very natural gray neutral color with my raw umber. I love raw umber. And then a blue violet that's very kind of sober, I've always felt with my ultramarine blue. Now, lately I've been using some cobalt, but I actually love ultramarine. I think it's a gorgeous blue. So that's my palette. That's it. That's all I use, and I absolutely love it. So when I say, okay, now I have the opportunity to push saturation, I'm probably only thinking about cad red and alizarin. That's about it. Those are the colors that would naturally push saturation in my palette. But today I wanted to be a little bit braver. These past 4 days, have been about just being way out of my comfort zone and just doing stuff with color that I don't really usually do. So I was like, the hell with it. Let's put some cobalt in the palette and let's put some bismuth again. So that's my extended palette. And I think it's extended because I have couplings of my primary colors. So I'll have 2 yellows, I'll have 2 reds, and now I'll have 2 blues. So for my yellows, I'll have bismuth and ochre. For my reds, they'll be the same, cad red and alizarin. And for my blues, I'll have cobalt and ultramarine. And that for me is like a huge palette. That's huge. That in my mind, that's like insane. That's way too much. But by giving me the chance to have a more saturated yellow, I could access more saturated hues, particularly darker hues if I was mixing my blues with that yellow. So I was like, okay, I can do a painting that has saturated reds, saturated greens, and a saturated blue. That's all I want. I want to construct this painting with those 3 highly saturated hues and put it right next to a kind of neutral background just so they pop. They all kind of pop in a single instance. That's what I thought. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be super simple. The portrait is going to have just a relationship of red and green. That's about it. I'm not going to do anything weird with that. Just kind of complementary-ish, like we did that week. And for my neck, I thought I was going to push a little bit and say, okay, what happens if that red just suddenly turns into a green yellow and then into a green blue? And this is where something super interesting happened because I noticed something that was just crazy weird, and I'll try to describe it. So I'll have a massive green blue, and then I'll have a massive red, which is basically cad red and alizarin. And my hope was that when they touched each other, they would just turn gray, and that would be it. But something very weird happened, and I have no clue if it was just my perception or this is just how it happens. But when they mixed, it became darker, which is crazy. Because in my mind, in my very simple mind, if I have 2 colors that are the same value, if they mix, they shouldn't just react. They should just mix the same value. That's just pure simple color mixing. If you have a red with the same value as a green, if they mix, where is the darker value going to come from? That's kind of insane. Unless I thought there's something weird in their chemical makeup and they're reacting and it's kind of turning darker. But that's kind of what happens. It actually, when they met, they just got darker and it's so freaking weird. So I have two things that I have to figure out from this week. Why my black and white was actually shifting value when it was drying when applied on top of a black and white layer of paint, because it was, I mean, I did it enough time to know that I'm not crazy. It was shifting. And why the hell did these two colors that I saw as the same value when they came together, they got darker? That one, I have no clue. That one, I absolutely have no clue. So I'll try to talk to people that make color and maybe they can explain to me that there's something going on. All I can think about is that there's something going on in their chemical makeup. And when they come together, maybe I have no clue. I don't even want to speculate because I'm going to sound stupid, but something happens. Or three, and this is the weirdest one, maybe it's just my perception. Maybe I think they're getting darker, but I was like, I showed Danny when I was painting. I was like, you should come here and look at this. This is so weird. It's turning darker. Like, this is the color that comes when these two mix together. And it was kind of nuts. I thought it was crazy. I don't know. What's cool about all of this is that probably all of this was happening kind of under the radar while I was painting, and I've never noticed it. And I don't want to sound like I'm haphazardly painting. No, I mean, this is 20 years of me trying to pay attention to my tools. So if something like this happens, it's like I should have noticed this stuff was going on like in my palette. It's not like I'm doing anything super weird with it. But truth is, I never noticed it. Like, I'm not ashamed to say I just never noticed that was happening. And it's so cool that I grant myself a week to just notice those things about my palette. Because even though we may think we know everything we need to know about our palette, chances are we haven't explored a facet of our palette and a dynamic in which our colors mix. If we don't, in a way, force ourselves to do some of these exercises, and I call them exercises. Again, I'm not ashamed to call them exercises. I think every single painting is just an exercise in trying to do something. So if it's an exercise that takes 6 months, fine. If it's an exercise that takes 4 hours, fine. The nature of it is exactly the same. I do think that the value of what we're doing doesn't lie upon just making a pretty painting at the end of the session. That's fine, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter. Everything that we're learning about our palette, about our colors, oh my God, that is, invaluable. That is absolutely priceless, because that's what actually is going to get us closer to generating the kinship that we have to have with our tools, with the tools that we've chosen to express ourselves, to explain to ourselves the manner in which we understand the universe. So for today, like I said, it was a lot about having a ton of courage that was gathered from the days before and just really, really taking a chance and saying, okay, I've kind of understood the power of saturation from days before, but now I'm going to really, really push it. And I'm going to have these three hues be super crazy saturated, both the red, the green, and the blue. I just want to have instances of them that are highly saturated. I wanted to go back to having unity in light and unity in shadow. That was going to help me a little bit because I need those moments. I'm human and I feel totally insecure about painting weird stuff. So I really needed to land again on something that was almost comfortable for me, just at least rationally understanding that I was painting a massive light and a massive shadow. Before this, and I was thinking about it, when I would think of a value like our starting value for today, and I would think of a low-key painting, my mind would go to either Ruprecht or Victor Mann. We've talked about Ruprecht, RVK, for I could talk about him every single day. He is the best contemporary painter right now. Hands down, I don't care who you throw at me. Doesn't matter. You could throw Antonio Lopez. I don't care. For me, Antonio Lopez is like a legend. He's like an old master. But Ruprecht is just, he's the best. So we could talk every day about Ruprecht. And he's done some paintings that are, lighter keys, middle value, lower keys. He's done everything. So my mind always goes to him because, yeah, I always go to him. But I thought of Victor Mann. But his paintings are always subdued. He'll have accents of very particular colors too. And maybe he'll have an accent through contrast and value. Maybe sometimes it's about saturation. Or maybe sometimes it's just a almost very, very dark image. But again, the key here is that his paintings are very, very subdued. The colors are very, very low chroma colors. And that's where I've always felt comfortable. I've always felt that that value is almost like this enveloping atmosphere, very physical atmosphere. So in my mind, it was easier for me to associate this exercise with just lowering all my values. But again, this is about just being brave and giving yourself the chance to just make horrible paintings if need be, but just doing something different just so your brain gets like a really nice workout from doing a very strange exercise. And I thought, this is awesome. Let's use saturation. That's why yesterday I used saturated hues, and today I'm really punching it up. I'm dialing up to 11 because I think it was necessary for me to just say, okay, let's experience this painting the way it's meant to be experienced. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved that I fought my natural tendency to say, but I feel more comfortable with the grayness. I feel more comfortable with like everything being subdued. And if you ask me still, like that's where I live. Like that, I love those paintings. I love those gray paintings. But I wanted to push myself. And I wanted to just tell myself, dude, you can make a painting if need be. If you had to, you can make these paintings and they can be powerful and they can be strong. You just have to understand them. You just have to make an effort to understand the possibilities, the expressive possibilities that are behind the act of really trying to push color and value, to try to marry those two. And I really, really liked it. Do I think I explored all the ways in which my colors could contrast with each other during this week? Like, let's say by contrast in temperature, contrast through complementaries, and contrast through saturation? No, for sure not. I only explored a few things. I mean, these are just 5 paintings. Like I said, we could paint like this for years, literally for years. And this is not finite. This would be endless. Color could teach you about its nature for the rest of your life. I noticed that I was probably in some cases doing complementary contrast. In other cases, I was doing saturation for sure. I think the one I did the least was temperature shifts. So it would be interesting if I could push that a little bit more in the future, but that's fine. That's totally fine. These were the 5 paintings that I did. And I really liked it. I really liked that I always speak about it in these terms, but that I granted myself the chance to try and do something different. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in trying and then failing. That would be totally fine. But just like giving yourself a week where you just say, I'm going to do this. This is going to sound weird. It's a little bit wacky. Maybe the paintings are horrible. Who cares? It's a week that you painted. And because you dedicated yourself to painting, to the act of painting for a whole week, and your mind was like, let's do this. Let's do this exercise. Like, I'm all in. And I'm going to be trying every day, and then once the paint session ends, I'm going to be reflecting upon it and I'm going to try to make sense of what worked and what didn't. If you do that for 5 days, that's an amazing, amazing exercise. Next week, we have a new theme. And like I say, always on Friday, both Danny and I are super grateful that you let us be your company. Really, really appreciate that you guys are here with us. So just remember, next week, doesn't mean that we're going to go crazy again with color. I really think I need my brain to like settle down. I really think that I need all the things that I learned to kind of settle down because my mind is like a whirlwind right now. So next week, I think I'm going to go back to bigger fundamental ideas about painting. And I think it's going to be super cool. So it's an invitation for next week. Remember, new theme. We're going to be here. So thank you for hanging out this week. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.